edition of Cooking Level Zero. This month we're going to be covering rubs and marinades, which basically means that you guys have all successfully leveled up your herbs and spices game. Congrats! Basically what you use rubs and marinades for is to impart flavor into meats and sometimes even change their texture. So I'm very sorry, vegetarians and vegans, this is going to be a very meat-heavy episode, but I do think that you can use some of these methods to make some really awesome flavored tofu. So basically, rubs are a mixture of salt, sugar, and herbs and spices that you are using to cover the meat. Unlike seasoning your food, in both cases with rubs and marinades, instead of just seasoning it right before or while you're cooking it, you're going to be doing this for hours, sometimes even overnight, before you start cooking your food. So in the case of like a rub, you're going to place it on your meat, and then you can let it sit for several hours before you start cooking it in a fridge, not just out in the open air, but I mean, you're going to let it sit for a while because that's what allows the flavor to kind of get into the meat and be able to flavor the meat. With rubs, it isn't going to penetrate very much, and it won't change the texture, but it will create a crust or a bark on the outside of it that is both maintains moisture and is very delicious. You ask a lot of barbecue people and they're like, that bark is their favorite part. It's also what they usually judge it by, so it's very important. Some of the main components of a rub are going to be, like I said, the salt, but also the sugar, and then there's often like cumin, chili powder, paprika, and like mustard in there. The sugar is probably the most important part, and it's the part that you're probably going to have the most of. The sugar is what caramelizes while you're cooking it and is what forms that bark or that crust. So a general rule of thumb for making a rub is to use a 1-to-1 ratio. So basically you want to have 1 part sugar to 1 part salt plus whatever herbs you want. I do recommend using brown sugar instead of white. It just has a little bit more flavor and it makes a really nice texture, and I personally just kind of prefer that one. So how you apply a rub is pretty easy. It's in the name. Basically, you're gonna smack it on there and you're gonna rub it, you're gonna massage it into the meat. You wanna try to get into like all of the crevices and into the folds. Like if you're working with like ribs or something, make sure you like lift up all the flaps and make sure you get everything. That way it has the chance to get to as much of the meat as possible. And that is basically rubs. The only last thing I need to tell you guys about rubs is that there are 2 different types. There are wet and dry rubs. Dry rubs, as the name suggests, they just have dry ingredients, so it's kind of more of like a powder, like a seasoning blend that you're gonna put on there and then pat in and rub in. Wet rub is used with like olive oil or water or yogurt, and it's used to kind of make it more into like a paste. And you use that paste to go on to your meat and rub it in. So those are the 2 different types of rubs, but neither of them really do the same thing as a marinade. So next, what a marinade is a marinade is something you are going to be soaking your meat in to impart flavor and also to change the texture. That includes marinades like they include herbs and spices, aromatic veggies like onions, garlic, or peppers, flavorful liquids like olive oil, lemon juice, soy sauce, vinegar, yogurt, and basically you're soaking the meat in there to impart flavor, but also the acid part of the marinade, the lemon juice, the soy sauce, the vinegar, is also going to work in the meat to break down the muscle fibers and start making the texture more tender. So it's going to give you more tender meat if you're working with like a really tough cut or like chicken breast or something. So it really helps. You do want to be careful not to over marinate your meat, because if you over marinate your meat, especially like delicate cuts of meat or like delicate meats in general, like shrimp, it will turn to rubber or completely mush. So you do want to be careful, and you want to make sure you know what you're doing, and you want to make sure that you know how long it should be in there. But basically, it's a really good way to be able to impart a lot of flavor. When you're making your marinade, don't be afraid to put a lot of something in there, like a lot of a specific herb, even if you're worried it's going to be like super spicy or like super oniony. because it won't all go into the meat, and it'll be a lot more subtle of a flavor that goes into the meat than what's in your marinade. And don't forget, you probably should just toss your marinade at the end because it's had a lot of raw meat in it and you probably don't want to risk it. So yeah, this is all going to be something that you're going to be probably tossing. So that is pretty much all the basic information I had for you guys as far as rubs and marinades go. This is a really great way to take your herb and spice game up another level. And it does in fact impart a whole lot of wonderful flavor into your meats and can also help make them a lot more tender and a lot more fun to eat. And there's a whole bunch of ways that you can like mix stuff up to create like a totally different rub or marinade than somebody else. It's always fun with me and my dad comparing our rubs and fighting over whose is the best basically. So I highly recommend trying it. And I hope you guys found a lot of really good information here. And I hope you guys get to experiment and have a great day. Bye.